Best here.
I'm gonna hit start stream. Let me see. Okay, I got the live notification on YouTube.
And it's up on the Twitters.
Ooh, and I got a Twitch notification on my phone.
Yep, I see my face on Twitter. We already have 25 people watching over there. Look at that. But everyone still needs to come to the Twitch chat because that's where all the cool people are.
We're so twitchy.
Yes.
I'll show myself out.
I need to open the topics. I thought there wasn't really going to be anything to talk about, but it just turns out I forgot everything that happened this past week.
I mean, there are a few things. It's not a big week.
No, worst case scenario, we can always come up with other random things to babble about. In fact,
or we could just complain about FedEx for 40 minutes.
Okay, I can totally do that.
Oh yeah, I have more stories about how they like screwed up everything. So
the worst shipping company ever.
No. Have you ever dealt with DHL when anything goes wrong?
Okay, yeah, and laser ship.
I've only ever had like 5 things delivered by DHL, so it's
I've had one thing delivered through DHL. I didn't even know that was a company until I got sent something through it. I was like, "What is this?"
It's mostly, it's mostly international things. Like OnePlus used to always come by DHL. I don't remember if they still do, but
international things or really, really big packages, like the stuff where it's the size of a human body or larger. Don't ask how I know that.
That's good. That's good to know.
I'll remember that if I ever need to ship a human body.
Exactly. Ryan, I found out how I can come visit you for cheap.
How?
Poke some ear holes.
DHL. You might not make it. You might get lost.
Yeah.
And then customer service is horrible.
Yeah. DHL customer service. Like, I lost a roughly human-sized package. Don't ask what's in it, but it's
there might be a perk. I don't know. I was told it was a surprise.
If and remember, finds
don't
like a really
cover up the breathing
holes. That's mine.
Yeah. It's a big letter this side up. Don't put me upside down, please.
Okay. So we should do the show thing we're gonna do.
Yeah. Let me real quick. Also say we're on Twitch.
Yes. If people want to talk, they should be in the Twitch chat because that is what we are watching.
Oh, and did you social on Facebook? I know the streaming isn't happening yet, but
oh yeah, I need to do that real quick. Actually, I can do that while the show's starting, so we can go in and go.
What are we doing?
We're starting.
Are we? Okay.
Yes.
Welcome to the Android Police Podcast. I am your host, Ryan Whitwam.
I'm Cody Toombs.
I'm Corbin Davenport.
And I'm Ryan Hager.
And this is a holiday week here in the U.S., so there's not a whole lot going on, but we have a few things maybe complain about. So we're just gonna jump right into a really good mood kind of story. HTC firing a quarter of its workforce.
It's the feel good time of the week, I can tell.
Yeah. So you might not realize how few employees HTC has left, but a quarter of their workforce is about 1,500 people.
Yeah, that's pretty sad. I mean, and I mean that in the genuine, like, that's really unfortunate. You hate to see that many people losing jobs, but at the same time, this feels, and I don't know a polite way to say it, but it feels like HTC is to some extent winding down parts of their business.
Yeah, I mean, they sold the OEM design part of the company to Google.
Part of it, at least part of it, yeah.
I mean, that was 2,000 engineers that they sold off to Google, like chattel. I guess the thing that you can do is just like sell your workers. But they had 19,000 employees in 2013, and it's obviously decreased quite a bit since then.
We have so much to say on this.
Oh.
All right, so
I was hoping so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
when-
just sad.
for
After the
future note,
G12
we
and
No,
need
you
to
know
start
what, that's-
editing out the pauses.
That's the thing with HTC is it's like what can you really say? We all know that this is going to happen. Like
and none of
there's
us
no way
wants it
HTC.
to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see any way that HTC can turn this around and not go out of business. I mean, being acquired fully by Google was like the last thing that I think could have saved them from being chopped up into pieces. But I don't see any way around that right now.
Yeah, it's one of those dark things where HTC has lost so much of the mind share for customers, for phones specifically. Though, how much was Vive really holding on in the last year? I know they've had some interest, but it just seems like a lot of the 3D or the virtual headsets have lost their focus.
I mean, I
Well-
feel like that they made Vive sort of a semi-independent thing.
Yeah,
So that I mean, I'm sure that'll keep going for a while. I mean, VR, modern implementations of VR are still very early. So I mean, I don't want to say that that's doomed, but I feel like mobile is kind of where VR is going to go. I don't know if desktop VR stuff is going to be a long-term success, but it'll last longer than HTC's smartphone business, it looks like.
Well, they have that last Hail Mary that's coming up, the blockchain powered Exodus,
Jeez.
which is just the
That's-
stupidest thing I've ever heard.
I guarantee
God.
that's never going to happen. That is not going to come out.
well, so I will just say this. I have a feeling Vive, the company, will last, if for no other reason, on patents. They have to have a crap load of patents, and they will just ride that out until they have something new, or the company just fades into obscurity. We'll see which one.
Maybe Facebook will buy them and to help booster Oculus. Yeah.
Well, HTC
Yeah,
could always spin it off and just make it its own separate thing.
Yeah, I don't actually know how well the Vives are doing these days, because I know they just came out with the Vive Pro, which is like this obscenely expensive headset that you need a pretty powerful PC just to run. And I know it's designed for people that already have the Vive headset, so it doesn't have the sensors and everything in the box. It's just the headset, and it's like $800, I think. So I'm not really sure.
Yeah,
If that's
desktop VR
sustainable.
it's so expensive, and you just have to have so much computing hardware behind it. I mean, a
And so
lot of
much
people
space
don't.
to enjoy it.
Well, I've really enjoyed my Windows mixed reality headsets, because Steam has worked very closely with Microsoft to make sure that all existing titles work. So I think I paid almost $300 for it, and it doesn't need any sensors or a large room, and it runs every VR game I've tried pretty well. So I don't really know if HTC can continue to sustain itself with these more expensive headsets. I mean, granted, Microsoft isn't doing a very good job of advertising these things. But yeah, I don't know how well Vive can keep HTC afloat, or even if it's spun off, if it can keep itself afloat.
Yeah, it at this point, I feel like HTC may just be kind of headed into this background position where they're either going to have to do a lot of work for other companies to make up money, or they're just going to disappear. There's nothing coming out from them that's really been a standout reason to pay attention again.
Okay, so I just looked up HTC's Q1 2018 financials, and they lost the equivalent of $170 million US dollars,
Ooh,
Wow.
and their losses are accelerating. And from that Google deal, they got 1.1 billion. So I don't know if they disclose how much they spend on like research and development, but
That's
I
enough
guess-
to tide them for a year.
yeah, I mean, they could make it another year, maybe two, I guess, if they, if it doesn't cost them a lot of money to make phones. But I mean, I mean, they're basically losing $500 million a year, and that's
so they're in
I
the
don't-
same league as Movie Pass, is what you're saying.
maybe even worse.
HTC is now a venture capital startup.
Well, hey, at least they're not losing as much as Uber.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, sorry, 680 million a year, I guess, if it were the exact same losses every quarter.
And
So yeah,
HTC
that's
and
not
HTC
good.
has not killed anyone with a automated car, so they've got that going for them.
I mean, imagine how much worse it would be if they had like killed people with VR or whatever.
Actually, hey,
VR while driving.
we mock, but I think HTC may be one of the only companies that hasn't had an exploding phone, like a severe injury on one of those in the last few years. So
they don't sell enough phones for us to know how regularly.
That's
I
the real
didn't
reason.
say there weren't contributing factors.
If Samsung only sold like an HTC U11 number of Note 7s, we might have never known that it was explosive.
I don't know. Well, yeah, that's very likely. Anyway, so
On the
speaking of
subject
Samsung,
of Samsung. Oh, yeah. God damn it.
yes, we are all about the segues. Leaked photos purport to show Samsung's non-stock Android Go phone. That's a thing.
Yeah. So I mean, I feel like
Samsung
didn't
making
realize-
a bad cheap phone? What?
I mean, if people were not aware that this was the thing that would happen, they should have been. I feel like we've been saying for a long time, Android Go does not guarantee a stock Android experience. That's not what it is. That's
Google
what Android
themselves
One
said,
is.
yeah, that it didn't guarantee a stock experience.
Yeah. It's designed specifically to address OEM complaints about Android One, in that they could not customize anything. They couldn't include, their own services and apps. So that's what Android Go is. And of course, Samsung being Samsung, if they make an Android Go phone, it's gonna run the Samsung experience and not anything resembling stock Android. How many services they are able to build into a super cheap phone without utterly destroying the experience is unclear to me, but I would be concerned.
I'm concerned just because having used Android Go for the better part of a month now, anything that's on top of it.
I mean, your
very
commitment
worse.
to that, it's just really, really upsetting to me. I feel like there's something wrong with you.
2 vacations with just an Android Go phone.
Anybody who ever questions your commitment to the job is very sadly mistaken. I would not do that. I do not have the same level of commitment as you do.
It's been terrible. I've been really unhappy. I'm like slow. But
Your
having
soul
used
is
it,
literally
like
crap.
the 1 gigabyte RAM limitation is huge. Like you see apps pushed out of memory while you're using them. I'm listening to Spotify on the train with the app open, and suddenly it's gone, and I'm on my home screen. I'm like, what just happened?
Oh my god.
I used Android Go for like a grand total of 10 minutes at MWC, and it was fine, like during those 10 minutes. But yeah, I haven't like walked around with an Android Go phone for an extended period of time to try and like use it normally.
And that was the Nokia one, and it was running basically stock. It wasn't like skinned.
Yeah, and I feel like these phones are obviously not designed for us, but companies seem to want to sell them in the U.S. and they're selling them at prices that I think are unreasonable.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They're like,
$100 is.
Yeah, that's, you can spend a little bit more and get a regular Android phone that probably has twice as much RAM and a much better screen.
Well,
it's just not worth buying those phones here. They should cost under $50.
anyone that knows me has heard me crack on Android Go quite a bit, and honestly, I don't see it as anything other than an excuse for OEMs to sell really heavily compromised phones with the expectation that Google's going to promote them or at least help them out in some way in selling these phones. And that shit shouldn't happen.
I think that Android Go kind of got away from Google. When they started this, I feel like it was pretty explicitly about the developing world. That's the way it was pitched originally. And over time, it just became a thing that OEMs could use to sell cheap phones anywhere. And I mean, and like we said, they're trying to sell a phone for $100 or $120 in the US that is garbage compared to something that costs $20 more. I think the only way that Android Go makes sense is for extremely cheap phones in developing markets where people, can only spend $50 on a phone.
And where the lack of regulatory costs means the phone can end up costing something equivalent to $50, $60, not $100,
like
$120.
markets where people either buy like a disposable flip phone, or they buy like a $50 no-name white label Android phone from China that runs a fake version of Android, like with uncertified apps. That's
something
like
based on 6.0 that's compromising their privacy and sending everything they type overseas.
like those are the markets where Android Go makes sense. It does not make sense in the US or in most of Europe, even most of Asia. I think probably does not need Android Go.
Yeah, no. India already has plenty of great budget phones.
Yeah, exactly.
This is
No,
the opposite of
in
that.
India, I think Android One is huge in India because Nokia.
I'm trying to. Yeah, Nokia is in India. I was trying to
I think
think.
that was one of their original markets.
Yeah. Once they got out of China, yeah.
And
Yeah,
Xiaomi's there, and all of them.
Yeah, and Xiaomi's huge. Like we have people emailing us all the time stuff about the Redmi Note phones. Like people love those, and we're like, that's great, but we've never even touched one in the US.
Yeah.
So
They probably never send us one because they know that people in the US won't buy one.
they send us phones sometimes, but it's always the fancy ones that look cool in pictures, like
I reviewed the Mi A1 last year, but that was like a global phone. So
that's different. Yeah.
So I have a funny feeling what Samsung's going to end up doing with this is basically the exact same thing with it we saw with the Gear Live. It's going to be their one time that they try this. It won't do that well. And Samsung will just be like, oh, that thing, forget it. We just tried it. It was a cute little experiment. So back to the $700 phone. Let's talk about that again.
Yeah. And Samsung has, I mean, again, I don't pay super close attention to their budget phones because 90% of them don't come in the US. They're always in like India and South Korea. But from what I can tell, their budget phones have always had very poor specifications for the price, especially in India.
They're selling based on the name, basically.
Yeah, and I know last week they announced a phone called the On 6 for India, and it was actually a pretty decent phone. I looked at the price of it compared to other phones in India, and it was on par with I think the On 6. It has their own CPUs in it, but it was on par with phones that had like a Snapdragon 600 or something like that. And it was actually a decent phone. So it's kind of weird to see them starting to make budget phones that are good and then also making this, which is it will almost assuredly be a bad phone, it looks like, because it's Android Go.
Yeah, this is not going to be a doomed to failure situation, but it kind of is.
You want to talk about something else that very well may be doomed to failure. Google is going to allegedly create a game streaming service, which has always worked out great for everybody who tries it.
Every company.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. What, you're not
remember OnLive?
Yeah. What, you guys don't have OnLive consoles? What's wrong with you?
I mean, I've been paying for GeForce Now every month since it was available. Definitely.
Oh
no.
Yeah.
No,
you don't need a gaming.
Nobody does.
No, yeah. But the main thing is earlier this year, there were rumors, I believe the information leaked it, about Google was making a streaming service very much like GeForce Now. And the update to that is that Kotaku found additional details that Google is working on some kind of hardware for this service. So maybe like a Google Steam Link, basically. And they are also heavily trying to get publishers on board, and they might even buy gaming studios to make it happen, which would be very interesting.
I mean, I feel like if Google does this, it would have to be a thing that works like in Chrome. Like maybe they'll have a device you can plug into your TV, but I feel like with how big Chromebooks are now, there would have to be some way to play on that.
One person that Kotaku quoted actually literally said, imagine playing The Witcher 3 within a tab on Google Chrome. So I think it will probably have a web-based component.
Yeah. The thing is, like, a game streaming service right now does not seem like a safe bet, because I and a lot of other people in the US have caps on our bandwidth.
Yep, me too.
I can pay more to not have a cap, and I unfortunately have to do that. But for a lot of people, they're not gonna spend the extra money for that, and they're not probably going to, even think about getting a service where they have to stream all of their games. You're basically streaming HD video the entire time you're playing a game. It's just, it is a bandwidth cost that most people will not be interested in.
At least Google might be one of the few companies that could, from a technical perspective, actually do it, though. Because the big issue with stuff like OnLive,
it would have to be pretty seriously impressive compression.
Yeah, well, not just that, but with OnLive, the biggest issue I remember people complaining about was the latency, and that was just that there aren't servers everywhere.
I never used OnLive. GeForce Now is not bad with the latency. As long as you have a good connection, it's totally playable.
But Google has servers in more locations than like anyone else. If anybody could do it at a technical level, it's them.
Yeah, and they've also been pouring a lot of resources into making video work great on any connection. Like with Duo, they've been pouring a lot of resources into, I forget what the underlying technology is of Duo. It's like web. It's web something. I can't think of it, but it's like it's WebRTC. And they've been pouring a lot of resources into that to make it more usable on Chrome and other browsers. So maybe they could, and then they could also combine this with the work they've been doing with WebM and those kinds of things. They're getting really good at video compression, so maybe they could get this right. I don't know, but like Ryan said, I think if any company could pull this off in a way that people would want to use it, it would probably be Google. But knowing Google, this will probably be abandoned in 4 months.
Yeah.
So,
well, what bothers me is not and this is obviously true, but not everybody wants to do game streaming. Or obviously, if you aren't living in, let's say, a Google Fiber neighborhood or one of the FiOS neighborhoods, you probably still don't really have the speed and latency to really do game streaming right. So I'm sure I'm not the only person who would say this. Why can't they just partner with NVIDIA and come out with what would effectively be a Shield 2 and keep with the plan to buy game studios, buy some game studios, get them to produce games for a console that you would have out. Because it's not like that has been a proven method that, let's say, a company like Microsoft might have done in the past. It only kind of completely worked. So I get the logic behind this, but I don't get the logic where this is actually going to become a big successful product.
Yeah, it seems like Google does not have the necessary focus to make this happen. It's too big of a shift from what Google already does.
Yep, and I maybe if they could get some weird angle that no one's covered, this might be popular. Like maybe if they got it working on mobile phones somehow. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think GeForce Now is just on PCs and the Shield, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean it would work on a Shield tablet if you still had that, or Shield Portable, I guess too.
Yeah, maybe if they had like iOS and Android apps and the smaller screen could let them do a lower resolution stream and compress it, maybe that would work. I don't know. But I don't think, the general public probably wouldn't be super into this, especially with now that data caps are a thing.
Yeah, that's a really good point too, because everyone's already burning up their data on Netflix. You don't want to add games to it too.
Yeah.
On the subject of companies that do or don't have data caps.
I mean, I'll allow it. That wasn't the best.
Yeah, the segue works.
Okay,
was
so
right.
T-Mobile is rolling out RCS in a very bizarre way that is difficult to follow.
Yeah, no one knows what's going on. So they enabled it for via software update for the Galaxy S7 and the S7 Edge, RCS Universal Profile, which allows for interconnects between carriers. It's RCS the way everyone actually wanted RCS, as opposed to just the in-network solution that Verizon already has and that T-Mobile presumably already had. This is like real big boy, the RCS we were all waiting for. But it's only hit 2 devices. And no one knows if it's going to be like integrated in with Google's interconnect. So
Yeah. So what is the deal? Like T-Mobile made their own messaging hub.
yeah, so they have their own hub that's
Yeah.
based off of RCS that's for in-carrier communications using certain apps, but it's not
Yeah,
really
I-
RCS.
I couldn't figure out how you're supposed to use this. Like I asked someone who got the up. First of all, it's really bizarre that the first devices to get any new feature are 2-year-old Samsung phones.
Yeah. I mean, probably because
Yeah, they were rolling out. They
broke-
were already had the Oreo update ready, so they were like,
and if something is
Yeah.
broken, they don't want a very prominent new device to be broken.
yeah. So I asked someone if they who got this update if they had a new messaging app, which would be Android Messages to use the Google RCS, and they're like, nope, it's the same app.
Yeah.
It's just a
No,
little
so
bit better.
it's you have to use the Samsung Messages app to get this.
I don't. I think I still don't know because I don't have like a friend or anyone that uses S7 on T-Mobile, so I don't know what app they're using. When we reached out to T-Mobile to ask whose hub they were using, they were like, "We don't use a hub." And at first, I was like, I don't understand how that's possible. And then I went to the GSMA's website, which is the organization that makes the RCS standard, and they said it is possible for a carrier to build their own little interconnect, but then they have to like manually connect it with all the other hubs.
Yeah.
And so the update to this later was that, when people were complaining that they don't have it on their Pixel or whatever, T-Mobile was saying we're trying to connect it with Google's hub. So I don't know if in the end if you'll be able to use Android Messages or not, and that's the question that most people want answered, and I have no
I
clue.
mean, RCS is just a stupid mess.
It's really bad.
It's like Wi-Fi calling was a couple years ago. Like that would never work on any phone except for like 3 that you could buy from the carrier. And like eventually it came to everything, but it was like years later and everybody stopped caring. I feel like that's what's happening now.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's one of those things that would have been a good idea if it had been done maybe once people realized MMS was terrible and stopped using that, which was
Like a decade
10 years
ago?
ago. Yeah, it's not really effective anymore. And even if it was, this type of a rollout is just not working.
Yeah. I mean, and Google has made such a mess of its attempts at messaging that now it's just like thrown up its hands like, all right, fine, we'll just let carriers do RCS, knowing full well that they're going to be terrible at it.
It's going to end up with 5 different proprietary solutions.
It's a no-win situation. So switch to another messenger is my suggestion.
Yeah.
Start using Telegram or Signal or WhatsApp even. Just don't do this. It's bad.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm not completely ready to give up on it because you never know if this might get turned around. Maybe there's some aspect of this where in a year, all of a sudden, everything will actually be connected and working the way it's supposed to. I still don't think RCS is really the right answer because it still means that you have to have a phone number for every person who's going to be on it. That's obviously a big problem for kids. It's a big problem for anyone that, for whatever crazy reason, relies on landlines.
Yeah.
It just doesn't really work for a whole bunch of people.
And there's no security really beyond
Yeah.
your basic cell phone connection.
Yeah, I was talking to my little sister, and she, uses Hangouts because you need a phone number, and she told me that like all her friends use either iMessage or Hangouts because neither of those requires a phone number. So they're cutting out a ton of people with this.
They're probably not really allowed to cater to those people anyway.
yeah, exactly. Well, I agree. I don't like services that require a phone number for communication because I've wanted to use stuff like Signal before, but I don't feel comfortable giving people my phone number unless I know them in real life because you can link that, just search your phone number on white pages and someone has my address. So yeah, RCS is a mess, but I'm still interested in it because I don't think it will ever be a good first messenger platform. But I do like the idea of raising the lowest bar slightly higher by replacing SMS. Because that just it benefits everyone, even if they don't know it. It's kind of like if when non-tech savvy people get an update on their phone or their iPhone or a Chromebook or whatever, they don't really know there's an update, but they know it works better and they're more secure. Actually, well, the not secure part is not the case with RCS, but it's raising the lowest bar just a little bit higher, giving people who don't want to use an app some options. And every time we write about RCS, there is like 20 Europeans that come in the comments and say, "Why aren't you using WhatsApp?" And every time I want to say, it's great that you found something you like, but why is a proprietary app owned by Facebook better than my ancient texting technology?
Also, WhatsApp is a terrible app.
It really kind of
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
I know every time I haven't personally used it, but every time I see screenshots of it, it looks like an iPhone 3 app.
It's so ugly and clunky and weird, and everything is just in a strange, non-intuitive place. I don't like it. Sorry, Europeans.
It
I was
kind of
trying to-
blows my mind how many of the currently popular apps for communication of whatever kind are kind of terrible. And yes, I am absolutely looking at Snapchat when I think of that.
Oh yeah, no, they're the worst.
But
Snapchat
it's
is
true for
literally
almost
just
all of them.
a feed of clickbait. I can't even fathom how anybody likes using it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Snapchat's
so
bad.
we're all not with it, I think is the point. We're not. We're
Yeah.
not.
Well, I think it's just a classic case of they got the user base, so they don't care anymore. Really, that's why all these minor apps, and every time you see like a third party SMS app, that's always like gorgeous because that's their angle, is that it works so much better than these established apps. But yeah, I just think RCS is neat, and I look forward to when I will get it in 10 years because I'm on Project Fi.
So with the way things are shaping up on RCS, which I mean, a big part of this, let's be honest, is Samsung, which is kind of at the heart of this particular T-Mobile situation. Samsung kind of swooped in and decided to offer their own services to implement this in combination with or in collaboration with T-Mobile, and that decision is obviously bringing in its problems. But to kind of build on what you were just saying, now that everything is going awry, isn't it just kind of bad that we're bringing in this thing that inherently is going to add confusion? It's going to add security issues left and right. I mean, most people probably don't remember this, but both SMS and MMS have been at the heart of so many different types of attacks on mobile phones over the years. So many, it's ridiculous. There was I can't think of the name of it anymore, but there was this one attack people were doing on Nokia phones years ago with SMS messages. All you had to do was send if I remember correctly, and I might be slightly off here, you had to send one specific character, and it was a non-ASCII character. It was something kind of wacky, but you just had to send one specific message. You could brick a phone remotely. And there were people that, they were just for the fun of it. They were sending these messages out to random phone numbers and, presumably bricking hundreds, maybe thousands of phones.
It's back when everybody had a Nokia phone.
Yep. And I mean, there's no way RCS is going to be completely bulletproof. So this kind of stuff is going to be happening again. Again, not to that level, but it's going to be happening. At this point, if RCS isn't going to make major waves and change everything, we might have actually been better off without it. And go ahead and send the hate mail. I'm ready for it.
Well,
Yeah.
we're all already gonna get it though because we made fun of WhatsApp. So
Yeah.
the entire continent of Europe is going to come down on
They're
us.
furiously typing yes. So yeah, I wish it wasn't such a mess, and I think it's only going to get worse as time goes on. Like not necessarily in the next 3 years, but maybe in the next 5 when there's an RCS 2.0, and then you have the carriers that are still on 1.0, and the interconnects aren't working right, and it's going to be a really big mess.
To steal the
so-
wit from Reddit, RCS stands for real confusing shit.
So that's Prophecies of Doom, courtesy of Android Police.
Yes.
Um,
We have no
okay,
idea what's
so
going on.
we had a few other stories that we could maybe talk about. I don't know. We can just go down the list if somebody has something interesting to say about these. We can discuss. So there's a OnePlus 6 in red, same as the other phones, but it's red.
Yep.
Red.
Buy it in a
Good
couple
call.
days. I guess it looks pretty.
It does look pretty.
I wouldn't know.
Galaxy Tab S4 renders. It looks like a big tablet. Okay, I actually do have something to mention about this. So this looks like it looks like a 16:9 screen, right? It's not 4:3.
Oh, that is so weird.
Like the other,
Yeah.
like most Android tablets have been recently. So this looks like it's supposed to be 10.5 inches. This is going to be weird to like use, right?
I think so.
Yeah. Oh, and it it doesn't have physical home button, no physical nav anymore because that's what Samsung is doing now. So like, is there going to be a fingerprint sensor? Like, where would they put it? It's a tablet. I mean, where do you put a fingerprint sensor on a tablet? It's a convenient spot. Like,
Power
maybe
button.
there just won't be one.
Power
Yeah,
button?
I mean, it always bothered me on Samsung tablets where they put the home button in the portrait, but then I always use tablets in landscape.
Yeah. See, I mean, but like with a 4:3 tablet, I feel like you can use it in portrait without hating yourself. But a
Yeah.
16:9 tablet is going to be
It's real bad when I
weird.
try to use Android apps on my Chromebook C302 in widescreen. It's just bad.
Yeah.
It's really bad.
So yeah, this device, I don't know, it's real weird. It's probably going to come out. I mean, they might have announced it at IFA or something. I guess we'll see what happens. But yeah, so that's the thing. I totally believe this thing is real, though. It is at least a thing that Samsung was intending to make at some point recently.
Now I am really surprised this isn't running Chrome OS because I feel like Samsung is basically Google's primary partner with Chromebooks at this point.
I mean, I think that Samsung probably still feels like it can make some money with tablets. It's the only OEM that can, probably.
Yeah.
If there is
They can-
anyone that could do it, it's them.
They can sell a $600 tablet in enough volume that it makes sense for them to make it. I don't think anybody else can.
And I mean, they make Android tablets. They've started making Surface Pro type tablets that run Windows 10. I don't know why there's not already a Chrome OS.
Yeah,
tablet.
I mean, if this thing ran Chrome OS, that would be rad. Because I'm sure it's gonna have a keyboard dock.
Yeah.
I'd be
Yeah.
more interested if it did.
I would
Yeah, that would be
heavily
cool.
consider it if it did run Chrome
But
OS.
it probably won't. Okay, and then we had a thing about Google Duplex that I think is boring, so we shouldn't talk about it. Unless somebody disagrees, in which case you're wrong. All right. So then, okay, we're gonna call it for this week then. If anybody out there has any comments, questions, or concerns, you can reach us at podcast@androidpolice.com, and we will catch you next time.
Good night, everybody.
Excellent.
That's good. We have to get that.